Right. Do you want me to do the intro?
I think that with continuity, I think that you're good at that. I think. Well.
Welcome to Make It Your Business. I'm going to put a different emphasis on a different word, I think, for it. Make it your business. Make it your business. Who knows?
Make it your business.
Yes. We'll see. This is the podcast where we are two, let's be honest, small business owners. I don't even know if we qualify as that, micro business owners probably, in the UK, sharing our trials and tribulations, really just trying to provide insights from the trenches, if you like, of startup ownership, of business ownership, how to navigate those waters when you're really in it, because as we've discussed in our last episode, a lot of podcasts that are out there, certainly the more visible ones, are really from the perspective of people who've succeeded already. And whilst that's very interesting and very useful in a lot of ways, it's not always helpful to people who need to get from where they are. What's the next step? Not what's the step when I've got a team of 5. So that's really us in a nutshell. My name is Duncan Casey. I'm an actor, producer of 15 years, and owner and founder of Copper Sprocket Content Marketing. This is James Murray. James Murray. Tell people what Murray.
Okay. Yes, I'm James Murray of James Murray Finance, and I provide finance solutions for businesses looking to grow, find funding solutions for them via business loans, asset finance, and also arrange car finance for individuals as well.
Very cool.
Yes, so we're in the lovely position where we're dealing with lots of other businesses as well as running our own.
Yep.
And probably, the idea of this is to try and talk about some of our challenges, which today I think you mentioned you wanted to talk about the joys of being both parents and starting business.
I think it's worth saying that we both have a very similar home life, in that we both have 2 children, boy and a girl, as it happens, and we both have other halves who are in the public sector.
Yes.
Which, it's great in the sense of it is that kind of yin to yang type scenario, opposites attract, all that good stuff. But there are times when those two worlds collide, when things perhaps aren't going as fruitfully as you would like, and your other half, who's always worked in a public sector job, simply goes, well, why don't you just get a job? The fallback is always go and get a job, and so I suppose for those of you out there who are maybe in a similar position where if you're struggling, which a lot of people are right now, or you're in a slump, or you're in a even if it's just a psychological slump, and you've potentially got another half who, it's not that my wife is not unsympathetic. She's very sympathetic and very supportive. But her knowledge does not extend to the business world. It extends to the public sector. So it's kind of like, well, I've always had a job and it's secure and it's not going anywhere. So yeah, I don't know. How have you had that experience before? Has that been
Definitely. I was always surprised. I think the one thing with my wife, she heard me continuously while being employed saying how I wanted to run my own business. So I think for her it was almost just, she was just pleased that I was at least embarking on that. It was one less thing to hear me talk about. So she's been really supportive on that side. But yes, until you're actually doing it, you can't really fully express it. And I also don't know if your partner is really always the best person to share your business challenges with. You talk about things maybe more generally, but talking about the intricacies and strategies, and but also like say, especially when you start a new business, it's not all roses. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of doubt. You doubt yourself, and sometimes. Hence why I'm a big advocate of surrounding yourself with a really good network of people that can help support you, because your family can give you something, but they can't provide you everything. And I think having a supportive partner is really important, but you need something beyond that as well.
For sure. But actually, a business mentor of a very good friend of mine and client Dan Mangena, he said, seek counsel, not opinions. And I think that's, so in other words, seek advice from the people who've done it. Don't speak to Dave down the pub, because Dave down the pub will give you his opinion. And that's all well and good. And, and sometimes opinion is valid, but it needs to be counsel.
Yeah.
It needs to be someone who can say, no, this is what you do, because I've done it. And that, I guess flies in the face a bit of the purpose of this podcast, which is to sort of talk to people who haven't, quote unquote, done it yet, although they are doing it.
Well, we're doing it. And I think we also, we also work with a lot of other businesses, don't we? So we're sort of seeing how other businesses operate. So we're able to sort of stand on the shoulders of giants, I guess.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. But yeah, it's hard when it's your other half, and it's hard when you have young children. Our two are 4 and 8 months, and that is a very, tricky time for things to not go well.
Well, it's a great time to start a business when you're on about 3 hours of sleep.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
And 3 interrupted hours of sleep is a really good way to to energize yourself.
It's great when you're undergoing Chinese sleep deprivation, because and then that's it. It's having the energy and having the mental fortitude. And I think a lot of business owners will beat themselves up, especially when we're both the only people in our business, if you like. I work with lots of people, but I don't employ them.
Yes.
And it's hard when it's just you, and you sit there, and if there's a day when you've sort of done your to-do list and there's nothing left to do, but you're flogging yourself, you go, no, I've got to do something. I've got to do, why I'm not moving the needle today, nothing's happening, all that kind of stuff. And then, you're not getting enough sleep. You're racking your brain, maybe the kids are sleeping, but you're not. That happens too. It's a really tumultuous time, and for anyone, I think, but the flip side of that is, and the thing I always have to remind myself is that I could have a 9 to 5 and just never be around. We both would.
Yeah, that's it. I have the pressures of, I think we're both modern dads. We want to be there. We want to make the memories with our children and be supportive of our family, while also trying to create a sustainable business that can support our dreams, our ambitions, our monetary requirements. So that's a lot to take on. And I think the standards are really high. Obviously, I don't want to kind of make this a whole thing about social media setting the standards of what our expectations are. But we probably both have quite high expectations, and trying to deliver on those time and time again are difficult. And when you want to have a bit of time for yourself, whether that's doing your own hobbies or keeping fit or just having some personal time, building a business, which for me is sort of a priority. But then if I get a phone call from nursery, and as you say, my wife works at a hospital, she hasn't got signal, so I'm the call that I have to go and pick up because my little girl's hit her head on something, or she's puked up on some other child. Last year, my son had been poorly in class or something, and I was in the middle of a meeting, and those sort of things they're quite tough challenges to get around. And I think when you're at that next stage, we're at that stage, as you say, where we've not got employees, we've got contractors, but we're not necessarily at the stage where we've got that consistent amount of business coming in where we've got employees, and you then have to drop what you're doing and work things around it, and you have to become very adaptive. And I think as a parent, it does teach you how to juggle things, how to not be a perfectionist. And you just have to pick those things up later at night, or just work things around. Or I'm very lucky. We've got some really good. The kids have got great grandparents, so we lean on them quite a lot. Not everybody's got that. Is that fortunate, but it's really hard navigating it. And as I say, I'm sure other people do as well. But I put a lot of pressure on myself. I know sometimes too much to try and achieve on all fronts, and also, again, without getting too deep onto the philosophy of a happy family life, then have time for you and your partner, because that's also the thing. You put a lot of energy into your children, you then put a lot of energy into your business, but you then need to make sure that your relationship is working as well. So there's a lot there not to unpack.
No, definitely, and it's I think if you're listening to this and you've maybe come to it because you're in that position, or you're not alone. I think it's very easy because again, you go out and you find these podcasts where it's kind of like, a lot of, like whenever I've done it, you must do this as well. You look for them, they're like, you need to take time for yourself. You need 10
hours of sleep.
Yeah.
From some entrepreneur that's never had kids, and I'm not saying it's like,
or they're so old that their kids have, well, they got so old, but they're in a position where the kids have left, they're older, or and it's kind of like, and they're like, just tell your team that you're taking a day off. It's like, I don't have a team. A lot of these things always boil down to like, oh, here's how to motivate your team to do this, and it's kind of like
you're working in your business, not on your business, or it's, and it will come from a good place,
of course,
good intentions, but it's not always practical.
And I find as well, there's a lot of like, I'm at the point where a lot of people say to me, you need help, and I do need help. And I mean in my business, not mentally. But it's they go, you need to employ someone. I'm like, well, with what? The cash, I need a cash flow enough to do that, and that means I need enough margin in the jobs I've got on, or the clients we've got on our plate, to have someone come in who is paid for out of profit. And I know some people say, well, what if you've got cash reserves, just use those and hope that in that time that person will help generate revenue.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a really good point there, probably a bit off topic, but for certain, it's sort of a chicken and egg situation. You could invest and put everything on red, and there will be times that pays off, but there's also a lot of times that it doesn't. And I'm a big believer in balance myself. I think trying to grow organically really works. You build good foundations for your business, and you've got a nice stable grounding then to then go and employ. And obviously there's always going to be risks, but it's knowing at the right pinch points to invest in a team or to make that leap. Now, every business is different, but you might have venture capitalists, or you might have big investment going into the business. So I think in those situations, there's a business plan, there's a cash injection that isn't necessarily your money, and you can come and do that. Whereas when you're bootstrapping, when you are actually investing your hard-earned money, and unless you've just gone and you've just got some free cash sitting in the bank earning you nothing, and you can just go and take that gamble, when you are sort of working from month to month, you do have to just be incredibly patient, I think, and just wait for those right moments. And there's always going to be an element of risk, but it's where your risk tolerance is, and not being deluded with your business model as well, because you can go and employ as many people as you like. If you've got a bad business model, it's eventually going to fail and you'll lose money.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah, and that's something maybe from your end you can talk about, because to me the whole idea, of seeking investment is, my house will be on the line. I'll always be, I'll be tearing my hair about out. I'll have some bank breathing down my neck every 5 minutes about my EBITDA, and I'm, what I mean. And I'm like, that just sounds like more stress. I mean, admittedly, I suppose for me, I always get stuck in the cul-de-sac of, well, who do I employ? Because that person really has to bring business in and take care of operation stuff, and they have to essentially be another me. So, and that's going to be hard to find, especially at a sort of level that I could probably afford. And so I suppose how I've often wondered about seeking investment, but then obviously you've got to have something to offer them as you've got to have some form of leverage. And oftentimes that's just whatever property you've got, which is, of course, then a huge gamble for me.
Yeah, it depends on the industry as well. So businesses that are highly geared, for example, that raise a lot of debt. So let's say like a rental company, they're quite common because there's a very clear business model. But when it's a service-led industry, sometimes I think you've got to prove concept first. Yeah. And then that's when you then later down the line, you'll look at the option between debt or equity, and you'll sort of weigh up the pros and cons of those. So you'll weigh up, okay, well, do I take on debt? I keep 100% of the profits and the future business here, but I'm actually going to raise 50k, let's say £50,000 to go and invest in 2 new members of the team. That pays for their equipment, their training, 6 months of shortfall while we train them into position. You take on all the risk, but you take on more of the reward if it works. Whereas you might then see investment, of which there's less risk. You may also be getting investment from somebody that's been there before. You might get the experience, the classic Dragon's Den model, and and that can have its benefits, but you're giving away some of your your future profits. So yeah, it depends, and there's no right or wrong answer. I had this concept that I've been thinking about. I've been mulling it over, and I'd wonder if it's a really good idea for business owners to ask themselves this question. But I've got a bit of money in some premium bonds, and I do the usual thing. The end of the month comes and the next draw is going to happen, and I start to fantasize what I would do if I won £1 million. Right. But then I'm being very much a realist. I think, well, what if I won 100k on it or something like that? So, and then I then played the imaginary game of what would I do with 100k just falling into my bank account. Yeah. So because you'd consider it free money,
right?
And I've done that, and I thought, well, what would I do with 100k? And I thought, well, I'd probably invest a larger proportion into my business. Okay, so what would you do with that money? Yeah. And it's a really good exercise, I think, to run, because imagine you've got the money for free. You're probably going to run through a concept that might be very clearly a very good business model. Then obviously remove, and that might, just as an example, it might say, okay, right, I'm going to employ somebody here. I'm going to invest in this CRM system, which is going to cost me this, but then it's going to open that up. I'm going to invest in Google ads. I'm going to invest in some media content. I'm going to create an amazing advert for my website. I'm going to build a platform, whatever it could be.
Good.
Now remove the 100k.
Yeah.
And then think, okay, well, now I might have a plan to work towards. Now, obviously, it might not be a 100k cash injection. It might be that you then actually work out what would getting £100,000 look like in repayment terms over 5 years. Could I manage that? Actually, could I do half of that model and borrow 50k, start to work towards that plan? Or even if you don't want to take debt out, what should I do with some of my profits to reinvest? These are the projects I need to start working into. And I just think it's quite a refreshing way to look at your business. And sometimes if you are a bit stuck, just to kind of think, okay, for 100k, what would I do with it, with my business?
True. I think it's funny because you can also then turn that around and say, well, let's say it's 100k in sweat equity or something. I mean, as a real world example, I'm due to pay the Sales Navigator again this month for LinkedIn, and I've been doing a cold outreach campaign on there. I've been paying a team to do that, and it, in that year, it's landed me one client, but and it's a big project, but the profits from that probably going to wipe his face, if I'm honest. And I just sort of said, right, it's not working, get rid. Which means that I've got that budget effectively that I was going to spend on that for investing in a different CRM. So I am looking at trialing Apollo.io. I don't know if anyone's used that, but it essentially can functionally replace Sales Navigator because it does use LinkedIn voluntary information, so it can get people's email addresses.
And just to confirm, so Sales Navigator, to anybody that's not listening, is an add-on to LinkedIn, which ultimately gives you the search functionality to be able to directly approach pretty much the whole platform, but in a really strategic way. Really good for sales teams. But it is, it's not cheap, is it?
£800 and something just for the basic one, or 80 something a month, whatever it is. So it's not cheap, and frankly, it's one of those things where it's kind of I get the value, but I mean, I think people have been, now it's gotten to the point where, everyone gets those kind of messages.
If I get a promoted message, I turn those off. I mean, I don't really like direct messaging on LinkedIn personally, but
no, and not a lot of people do. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have had some really great calls with people, prospective clients, all that kind of thing. But anyway, I was looking at a new way to do it, and but for me, it's going to be okay. So there's a little bit of investment there. And I guess this is bootstrapping, really. It's taking the meager profits that I have and that I can reinvest, after paying myself and paying the mortgage and the childcare and all that stuff. Where can I allocate that best to generate some kind of ROI? And so that's what I'm trialing next. But and we said this before as well. The advantage of being so small is that it takes one or two clients to potentially double your revenue or double, and so you're at a point where it's possible to scale very quickly, but it's figuring out how to do that. And I like your idea. I mean, I do play that mental game as well. If 100k or £1 million or whatever fell in my lap, the trouble is at a certain point, if £1 million fell in my lap, well, I'd probably invest that and guess
that's a different game. It has to be a figure that
that you couldn't invest 100 grand and live off it.
No.
So you'd probably go, all right, well, it's better to sort of channel that back into my business. And at that point, I agree. And I think really all it would be is a turbocharge. I think that for me is, or an accelerant really. That's what I'd want for my business, is like having the ability to kind of leapfrog the years it's going to take doing it on my own, essentially.
Yeah.
Because as well, and a lot of business owners, we find this as a content marketing company. You go to people who've, like yourself or like anyone else, who sort of had to start from scratch, started with their iPhone or started with, basic stuff, or even just softwares and something. I pay for an Adobe suite. That, people, they're now sort of using AI, but it's kind of it has imperfect results, which is fine maybe for a lot of what people want, but that's something they've had to build up to. A lot of people aren't comfortable being on camera or talking, and so they need to figure out another way of doing their video content or that kind of thing. Yeah. And obviously the value we provide is that, and it is, I guess, is a soft pitch, but like the value we provide is you don't have to employ a team, buy a ton of equipment, and also you're getting expertise of like filmmakers, not just someone out of film school or a videographer, because a videographer will make something look very pretty and give you lots of dynamic shots, but they won't be able to tell a story necessarily in terms of the visual medium. So it's kind of, and as AI comes along, stuff is getting more niche, and I think so. It's about saying, well, if you had that injection of cash, who would you get? What are your weakest points, and who would you get into fill those gaps?
Well, also with your industry, you don't see a direct return on investment. Well, there is an element of a leap of faith. It's a lot about branding. It's a lot about credibility, and it's about the long game. So you're not always going to see that immediate impact. Whereas when you've got a really tangible product and you can market it on this platform, you can quantify the results really easily. So it's and for me, even you can take more of a leap on that. Whereas I think you've got to really understand the power of branding and the power of your well, also actually have a clear idea of what you're trying to pitch and your story, because I think I see a lot of videos go out there and they sort of don't really mean anything. They don't do anything. There's quite a lot of like comedy videos going around at the moment, and some of them work and they work quite well with the brands. But I think some other people in the finance sector, I've see a couple, and they're trying to do sort of these like office pranks and funny things, and that they could work in some areas, but it misses the mark in my opinion with their particular offerings. So I think having somebody else also to guide you with and work through that bit before you even put the camera on. What is the messaging you're trying? Who is your customer? What are you trying to achieve with this? But that's not direct results. People want to see money in the door tomorrow.
I mean, I see it as two approaches to stuff like this. There's the kind of, you do a 3-act structure, essentially long form video of some kind, whether that's even a podcast, but if you're doing a sort of a video, promotional video, or your corporate videos or that sort of things, do still need to have a beginning, middle, and end. There needs to be some kind of journey, essentially, that you're going to take people on. Whereas, or you can do serialized stuff. So if it's vlogging, it's essentially all second act. So your first episode is your inaugural "Who am I? What am I about?" and then the second, the rest of it is just sort of second act stuff. It is your journey, which is kind of what we're trying to do here. I think I find that with those videos, I see a lot. You sent me one the other day, which was sort of lamp shading. There was a lot of lamp shading that goes on nowadays, and I've started. This is a tactic that a lot of people are using, which is to say, we know this is another annoying sales video. We know that you're bothered by all this stuff. Ha ha ha, look, here's me getting out of my Lamborghini telling you that it's all bollocks, but then selling you something, and it's kind of like, well, we know the jig is up, like it is up. People know what you're there to do, and I think much better is to kind of, essentially, I mean, I think that what it's hard because it requires a lot of investment, whether it's your time or whether it's your money, but it is that thing of, you need to build essentially your own TV channel now.
Good.
And you can do it on the cheap, but
it's a really good way to put it. You've got to build your own Netflix.
because it's a community, isn't it? I mean, in order for any of this to have any meaning, people have to come in and feel as part of the community, and they have to feel, they say, what is it, that people have at least is it 10 or 100 touch points between, you know, first interaction and buying from you?
I thought it used to be 7, but it's been going up all the time.
But because of sales funnels and all that stuff, you know, it's kind of, and I get it, and it's hard. And of course, the wider the neck of the funnel at the start, you know, everyone sees this stuff every day. They're like, well, I got my pick of the litter. You know, who am I really going to go with?
I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but this is what we do, and I think it's just a question that's coming. And I don't know if you know the answer to this, but talking about the creating your own TV channels, and you know, I've got an Instagram channel, or page, Facebook, LinkedIn, and a TikTok,
YouTube.
Oh, and YouTube, yes. Don't forget YouTube. Yeah. So I've got sort of 5 mediums that I'm putting content out into, and I heard this thing about sort of audience fatigue, or it's content fatigue, and I wonder if you've got a perspective on this. But if you have, I've got some content. Let's say I am able to produce 100 pieces of content this year. Now, there would be the one example, which is probably what I'm doing, is I'm putting all 100 pieces of content out onto all platforms. So I'm going to reach all of my audience, because not everybody that's on YouTube is on LinkedIn, that is on Instagram, and but there is going to be a crossover. There's going to be a few, maybe 10% that follow 4 of those channels. There's going to be maybe another 10, maybe 20% on 3, and so forth. So I'm kind of scattergunning my content across all of those. But obviously, what I'm trying to do is reach a wider audience. Now, to reach a wider audience, what the algorithm, to do that, the algorithm needs to pick up that it likes my content. So it's going to first of all see that the people that are watching it for long enough. So in theory, if I've got my favoritist, best video I've ever produced ever, and I want to put that out there, and I want to put it on Instagram, if I've also gone and put that on LinkedIn earlier that day, and that 20% of that audience has already seen the video on LinkedIn, no matter how good it is, there's a very good chance that they're not going to be watching it on Instagram. They're going to swipe past it. So the algorithm on Instagram is going to say, oh, well, you've skipped past that. It can't be as good, because they've not got eyeballs. They don't know that James has just produced the most amazing video. So is there a strategy to pick a platform and just stick with one platform until you've made it on that platform? Or do you go somewhere halfway house, you pick a couple, and you rotate the media? Maybe you pick one, but you don't post that on the other one for another few days. Or have you got an opinion on that? Or have you heard that argument?
I think, well, but all I can go on is what I've seen with our clients is probably the best, you know. It's also subject dependent. So for the closest person I've got in my client roster to you is probably Bill Bloom, but he's based in Chicago, so it's a different, you know, thing, and he works on retirement planning, but he's still a financial advisor. And he, you know, we did a lot for him on Instagram. He put it on TikTok. The most successful channel he had was YouTube Shorts specifically, and some of his stuff went viral-ish. You know, you're talking 3,000 to 5,000 views on a short, right? And I had said to him all around, I don't think people go to Instagram for financial or retirement advice, principally because the age demographics just don't line up with that. Don't get me wrong, yes, you should think about retirement at an early age, of course, all that good stuff, but they don't. So really your 2 platforms should be Facebook and YouTube. YouTube is, bearing in mind, YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world, although I'm sure AI is going to lay waste to that in pretty short order, but it is still a very powerful search engine. And so I would say that if you're doing any kind of advice-based stuff, YouTube should be your primary focus. To do long form and short form. Long form videos will get no views and they will languish there for a long time. That's a given. You know, I have a client who's in HR, in the HR space in America, and you know, we put all this stuff out on YouTube. It's principally there really to go on LinkedIn. But we do the YouTube channel because I just say to him, look, for SEO, if nothing else, you want this stuff on there. Because that's the other side of it, is actually you're not necessarily bothered about it, because the views and the comments and the blah, blah, blah are all great, but they are vanity metrics in a lot of ways. And if you're in a B2B space especially, you're more concerned about SEO and traffic going to your website ultimately. And therefore, you know, bearing in mind that everything now has transcription software baked into it. So, because there's auto captioning on everything. LinkedIn has it, everything has it, which means that software is, figuring out what you're saying and somewhere it's storing it, assigning it to that video. So your YouTube videos, all that stuff is still creating SEO for you. It's also very important to embed your videos in blogs and stuff like that, because actually, you want that backlinking, and ultimately over time, it all forms part of your kind of SEO portfolio. I think if you are, it depends on the type of content as to which channels you should go after. I do think ultimately, share it across everything. I mean, Alex Hormozy is across everything because but he attracts kind of, everything from your tech bro wannabes to bodybuilders, because he's tonk, right? So everyone wants to hear his advice on bodybuilding, but also starting business.
Broad spectrum,
and also philosophically, I think people want to buy into that whole kind of like, it's cutthroat, you've got to do that, it's extreme.
But just like with him, they've already got such a platform, they can then,
but that's what I mean,
spread it. I think when you're going back to, let's say we've got Mary has just started her new business, selling flowers. I'm just generic, picking flowers. Right. But what would you be saying to her as far as her platform? And she's got no followers apart from her family and friends at this moment in time. What would you say to her with regards to content and where she should be, which platforms she should be focusing on?
Well, bless her, Mary. If you're selling a product, especially a perishable product, but realistically is going to be so geographically specific, I would go after like Facebook. I'd start a Facebook group, and I would just try and grab as many local people as you can, because that's who you're going to sell to. Unless Mary has machinations of becoming the next Interflora, in which case if you want to get a wider audience for something like that, then you need to be doing advice pieces on, how to store your chrysanthemums or how to look after your rose bushes, and then be putting that out on
the advice base. So it's more of and that's where you then go onto the YouTube sort of,
I'd say so,
and then direct into your website to place orders. You'll become your own micro influencer. Your sort of,
and bear in mind, this is going to take years if you're going to do it organically, which I advise people to do. I've worked with clients who've outsourced to other teams to, they've had me doing the content, but the growth, if you like, is supposed to come from other teams. And then when I've looked into their analytics, sure, suddenly this video got 10,000 views, whereas before we were maybe getting 1,000 to whatever. And then you go, but they're all in Brazil and they're watching for the first 30 seconds.
There's no value in that.
And YouTube knows you're an English-speaking channel. And so it's going to go, well, why are you blowing up in Turkey?
But it will, it will take your money to promote it.
Oh yeah, of course.
You hit that promote button, they'll take as much as you want to give them.
Facebook and LinkedIn, they all have that boost your posting, which is total rubbish because there's nothing of the sort. So no, I think that, and this is why I would say to people, like, you need to find a way to make this sustainable. And oftentimes it's like, okay, maybe you don't have the budget to pay us to do it. Then you need to find your own time to do it. And people, doing things like this, rough and ready though it is, it's like you need to find that capacity, whether it's financial or time based. You just need to start doing it, and you need to make it sustainable.
We started talking about family and children and getting time, but you can talk kind of going full circle. Getting time to do that is quite difficult, and I think trying to have a strategy in place. I mean, for me, I use CapCut for my videos. It's I paid the subscription. I think it's under £10 a month. And it's got all of the sort of captions and everything you can produce on there. I've bought a tripod, and that's about it. Talking to the camera, I gradually got more comfortable with doing that. At first, I hated the idea of talking to the camera, but you get more confident with it, and then you just have to fit that around what your schedule and come up with good quality content and try and be authentic and offer value to your audience.
Is the main thing. It's always going to be the main thing. I know it sounds cliched, and I think business owners, especially, find it hard when you say that to them, because they're like, well, no, you should be telling me the secrets of how I tickle the algorithm and money comes out of the internet. And it's not how, and it's so true. And I did see this through the YouTube. There was I get these videos through my various YouTube channels.
They called tickle the algorithm.
They don't. There's, advice on how to work it. And look, yes, there are tips and tricks and things that will, if you're prepared to just be a channel that grows. I have a friend who did this. He was a fan of, because I have another YouTube channel called Vanity Broadcasting where we talk about movies, and he was a fan of ours, and he eclipsed us with his channel. He went out there and he was like, right, I'm going to, my friend Lee, he was like, I'm just going to do whatever it takes. And he did do that, but he didn't, if you go on his channel, he talks about anything and everything. And he's very good. He's very good at that, but it's kind of
worldwide audience.
Yeah, worldwide audience, everything great. He smashed it up to 60,000 subscribers in a year or whatever it was. Great stuff. But
Mary's Flowers, if she's delivering to everybody in the UK nationally, she's better off having 1,000 good subscribers or 1,000 people in her audience than 1 million that are in Brazil and China.
And found you because they wanted to hear about your opinion on Donald Trump or Ukraine.
Yeah, you can go through those quick wins.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily, if you're a business, it's not going to help.
Vanity metrics, like you say.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose if your business is to simply grow a channel and then get the ad revenue and then fine. But
you shouldn't confuse those.
No.
That like you said at the start, it's about almost creating your own media, your own channel.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, fair enough. If you want to just be a content creator and go out to the masses and create ad revenue, that's the only time really that you really want to be doing that, I think.
Yeah. And like this for example is the other thing to think of is like we've done here is we've kind of pooled our resources. So the point of this podcast is not to sell either of our services necessarily or become experts in a particular space, but it's about offering our experience and our advice and based on what's worked and really cultivating an authentic community, which we're not going to necessarily sell to you directly, but that's the thing. It builds authority. And we landed the last one on, what was it? Seek counsel, not opinions. If I could, this is another cliche.
Could have finished on quotes.
It's another quote.
It's going to be a tradition.
It's, I think Alex Hormozy said this actually, but it's give away the secret, sell the implementation. And I think that more and more now is true in that, this content should be about educating people. Oftentimes people don't want to give away secrets of their industry, but someone's going to. Whether you do it or not is irrelevant. You're not losing anything by educating people. Like I could sit here and tell you all the secrets, if you like, of making a great video or content creation or content marketing. You've still got to implement it.
Yeah.
And it's selling that once people understand the value, that's how you sell to them.
Yeah. 100%.
Cool.
I think we should finish it there. We've gone full circle.
I think so. But hopefully that was useful to you, guys. If you're listening, thanks, Mum. Thanks, Dad. Do please subscribe. Do all the good stuff. If we're on YouTube, hit the like button. Leave us a review. That would be really kind.
Only a good one.
Well, ideally a good one. Yeah. Yes. If you'd like to see more of this, of course, please do interact in the various comment sections that will probably be under this video. We'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear, your struggles as well. We want to hear from you because I think that's really important that we are a community as well. And until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.